The wind howled across the wintry plain, driving banks of snow in swirling eddies over the graves clustered at the edge of Winterfell's godswood. It was here, among the faded stones and tangled roots, that Melisandre moved with spectral purpose, her red robes flickering against the gloom like blood against old bone. She passed through the shadow of the great heart tree, its face leering and weeping crimson sap, her eyes fixed on a modest marker, a simple cairn, built by hands both loving and desperate, its stones slick with rime. For many nights she had watched the skies, read the movements of the flames, and pondered the secrets hidden in ash and bone. Now, as the hour of darkness reached its deepest shade, Melisandre knelt in the snow, letting it soak the hem of her robe, and laid her hands atop the cold cairn. Blood for fire. Fire for life, she whispered, her breath a crimson wisp in the air. Let shadows flee before the dawn. Let secrets be revealed. Behind her, Jon Snow waited in tense silence, his dark hair damp with frost, his cloak wrapped tight. He had not come willingly, Davos had argued, Sansa had pleaded, and Arya had only stared at the Red Woman with wolfish suspicion. Yet Jon had come, his own heart heavy with questions that had grown louder with every battle, every vision, every shiver of something strange in his blood. Melisandre's eyes glowed in the night, twin embers as she began her chant. The flames she had lit around the cairn sputtered, but as her song rose in the old tongue, the fire flared, brighter, redder, impossibly hot, melting snow in a circle about her. Jon took a step back, hand on Longclaw's hilt, remembering death and resurrection, remembering breath that was not breath and life that was not life. Melisandre drew a small blade from within her sleeve and dragged it across her palm. Blood dripped, hissing as it touched the burning stones. She pressed her palm to the cairn and the fire danced up her arm, but she did not flinch. Her voice was not hers alone. It became deeper, layered with other voices, women and men, mothers and children, the cry of the wolf and the song of the wind. Lyanna Stark, daughter of Winterfell, mother of dragon's blood by the Lord of Light, I call you forth. The flames roared skyward. The stones cracked, then shifted. Jon fell to his knees, a terrible cold gripping him, even as heat pressed at his face. In the fire's heart, a shadow rose, twisting and coalescing into the shape of a woman, tall, proud, her hair a streaming river of midnight. Lyanna Stark opened her eyes. The world held its breath. Jon's own heart stopped. She was not a corpse, not a wight, not a ghastly mockery, but alive. Her eyes were a deep, fierce gray, like the dawn after a storm, and she wore her old riding leathers, torn and stained, as if she had just returned from flight. For a moment she was young and whole and tragic, the promise of a summer never lived. She looked at Melisandre, then past her, and her eyes found Jon. They filled with sorrow and wonder. Her voice, when it came, was soft, yet clear as the first melt of spring. Jon, she said. He could not move. The world spun around him. Ghosts and stories, wolves and dragons, the hush of ancient snow. My lady. The words caught in his throat, too small for this moment. Not, my lady, Lyanna said. Not to you. Come here. He rose, feet unsure, and crossed to her. The night air shimmered. The godswood seemed to bow. The heart tree's red tears drying as if the land itself grieved and hoped all at once. Lyanna reached out and brushed the back of his hand. Her touch was warm, real. She smiled, though her eyes brimmed with pain. You have your father's hair, but the rest. That is all your mother's gift. I see now how much you have grown. Jon's face twisted. He could not breathe, could not speak. Lyanna turned to Melisandre, who sagged, exhausted, but still fierce. Why have you brought me back? The Red Woman's gaze was distant, as if she watched something far away and terrible. Truth must be revealed. The darkness in the north grows stronger. Secrets are a poison. Only light and truth can cleanse what is to come. Lyanna looked again at Jon. You have questions. I have answers. Sit, and I will tell you a story. Jon knelt beside her, the snow untouched around them, as if winter itself was held at bay by her presence. He could not imagine a world where this was possible. Yet here she was, the woman he had seen only in broken songs and half-whispered stories. Lyanna drew a breath, her hands clasped together. I was born in this place, beneath the shadow of the heart tree, the child of Eddard and Catelyn Stark. I grew with the wolves, fierce and wild, but I was never meant to be caged by stone or duty. The realm saw me as a prize, one more pretty thing to be bartered, like a sword or a horse. But I dreamed of something more. Jon listened, drinking in every word. I was betrothed to Robert Baratheon, she continued, but I did not love him. He was kind in his way, but I was his dream, not his equal. I was never meant for that. Then, at the tourney at Harrenhal, I met a prince, a dragon, not of the old songs, but of flesh and blood. Rhaegar Targaryen. Jon stiffened. He had heard whispers, rumors, always buried, always denied. We spoke in secret and found in each other a kindred spirit. He was not the madman his father became. He saw the realm in pain and wanted to heal it. He saw in me a promise, a hope, something pure. We fled not for lust, but for love and duty. We wanted to forge a new world where old wounds could heal. And she, her voice faltered and tears slid down her cheeks. But the world would not allow it. The lies began. They called it an abduction. They called it a rape. Robert and my brother Brandon came for me. Swords drawn. Hearts burning with vengeance. But none knew the truth. Jon's mind raced, his whole life unspooling. Every slight, every word from Catelyn, every glance in the yard, every night spent knowing he did not belong. Lyanna pressed on. We wed in secret, beneath the light of the old gods and new. There, in the Tower of Joy, I bore a child, a boy, strong and fierce. My son, our son. She took Jon's hand. Her grip was trembling, but strong. I named you Jaehaerys, after the wisest of the old kings, but they call you Jon. Your father, my brother Ned, found me as I lay dying. I made him swear to protect you, to keep you safe from those who would destroy you for who you are. The realm would have torn you apart. Robert, in his rage, would never have let you live. A dragon son born of Stark blood. Bens. Jon's world shuddered, the foundation of his life cracking and reshaping. Ned. Ned was my father, all my life. Ned was the truest father you could have, Lyanna said softly. He loved you as his own. He lied not to hurt you but to save you. You are of both wolf and dragon, Jon. You are the song of ice and fire. The world will need you. A silence fell, broken only by the wind, the distant cry of a wolf, the shivering hush of the trees. Melisandre spoke, her voice thin. The Night King marches. Light and darkness gather for the final battle. The truth of your birth will rally the living or doom them. You must choose. Jon stared at Lyanna. He saw himself in her. The stubborn tilt of the chin, the storm in her eyes. What am I meant to do? Lyanna brushed his hair from his brow, a gesture of impossible tenderness. You must decide for yourself, Jon. The blood of the dragon runs in your veins, but so does the honor of the wolf. You are not just a weapon. You are hope. Footsteps crunched in the snow. Sansa stood at the edge of the fire circle, her eyes huge and rimmed with red. Arya followed, face set, her hand on the hilt of her blade. Bran, silent and strange, watched with knowing eyes, as if he had always known this truth. Sansa's voice trembled. Is it true? Lyanna met her gaze. It is, child of my blood. Jon is my son. Rhaegar was his father. Sansa gasped, clutching her cloak. Arya stared at Jon as if seeing him for the first time. Bran only nodded. The three-eyed raven sees all things. I saw it in my visions. Jon, you are the heir, not only to Winterfell, but to the 7 kingdoms. Then, Jon rose, shaking. No, I am no king. I never wanted this. Melisandre smiled, a shadow of triumph in her tired eyes. The Lord of Light does not care what you want. The wheel turns. You are the only one who can unite the living. The others will follow or fall. The air seemed to vibrate, charged with prophecy and grief. Lyanna touched Jon's face. You must not hide anymore. You must embrace who you are. He closed his eyes, letting her words fill him. When he opened them, the world seemed different, brighter but harsher. A distant horn echoed over the fields, ghostly, warning. The dead were coming. Lyanna stepped back, her form growing fainter, the firelight shining through her. Remember, Jon, the truth is your shield. Tell them. Tell the realm who you are. Only then will they stand with you. The wind picked up. Swirling snow in a blinding dance. When it cleared, Lyanna was gone. The stones of her cairn had shifted, forming the shape of a direwolf and a dragon intertwined. Jon knelt in the snow, heart pounding. Melisandre's words echoing in his mind. Light and darkness. Wolf and dragon. Song of ice and fire. Bendo. He looked to Sansa, Arya, Bran. He saw their shock, their fear, but also their hope. He rose. The time for secrets was over. The war for the dawn had begun. Oh. They gathered in the great hall of Winterfell. Word spread as fast as rumor, faster than fire. Until every lord and lady, every knight and squire, every wildling and sworn sword in the north was present. The Stark banners hung heavy overhead, and the silence was thick as morning fog. Jon stood at the high table, flanked by Sansa and Arya. Bran's chair at his side. Davos hovered near, wary, and Melisandre lingered in the shadows, her red eyes watching all. He took a breath, feeling the weight of the truth pressing on his chest. Ghost sat at his feet, and it was only the presence of the great white wolf that kept him steady. Jon's voice was rough, but sure. There are things you must know. Things that have been hidden, not to shame our house, but to save it. I was told I was Ned Stark's bastard, Jon Snow. That was a lie. Not out of malice, but out of love. He paused. Faces in the crowd turned, eyes widened. My true mother was Lyanna Stark, sister to Ned. My father was Rhaegar Targaryen. I am their son. My name by birth is Jaehaerys. But I have lived my life as Jon. A roar of voices, shock and disbelief, rippled through the hall. Some shouted, Targaryen, and others, Stark. But Jon raised his hand, and they fell silent. I am both wolf and dragon. I have bled for the North. I have fought for the living. I claim no throne, but I will not deny the truth of my birth. Sansa stood beside him, head high. He is still our brother. Blood or not, he is a Stark. We stand with him. Then die. Arya grinned, the threat in her smile clear. Anyone who disagrees can say it to my face. Laughter broke the tension, but many faces remained troubled. Lord Glover, bearded and grim, spoke. What proof do you have? How can we trust the word of a dead woman and a red witch? Bran's eyes were unfocused, but his voice was steady. I have seen it in the past. I saw Lyanna give birth. I saw Ned carry the babe from the Tower of Joy. Jon is her son, and Rhaegar's. The magic that brought her back is not something the Lord of Light gives for lies. The room shifted, uncertain. Jon looked out, meeting each gaze. The dead march. The Night King comes for us all. I care not for thrones or crowns. I will fight with you as I always have. All I ask is that you stand with me, as Starks, as Northmen, as living men and women who will not kneel to death. A silence, then a voice. Lyanna Mormont, fierce and proud. I knew you were no bastard, Lord Snow. We follow you. Not because of your blood, but because of your heart. A cheer erupted, carried by the wildlings, the men of the Vale, The Knights of the North. The truth at last had found its light. Jon felt the eyes of the world upon him. Sansa squeezed his hand. Arya nodded, a wolf's approval. Bran watched, inscrutable. Melisandre met his gaze. The night is dark and full of terrors, but now you have fire. He nodded, unsure, but resolute. Outside the snow fell thicker, as if the world itself was bracing for what was to come. Inside the fires burned brighter. Secrets, once buried, now gave light. And at the edge of hearing, in the quiet between heartbeats, Jon thought he heard Lyanna's voice again. Soft and proud, promising hope. My son, my hope, my song. Linawand. Ka. Word of Jon's parentage swept through Winterfell like wildfire, melting old certainties and igniting new questions. Lords whispered, and shield maidens gossiped, uneasy, some searching their memories for hints, others nursing quiet outrage or awe. In the Godswood, the old ravens roused and muttered, ruffling their wings as if the past had finally caught up with the living. Jon spent the hours after the revelation pacing the ramparts, the north wind tugging at his hair. Ghost padded at his side, silent as a shadow. The air crackled with expectation, fear, hope, dread. Sometimes, Jon pressed his hand to the rough stones, grounding himself. Winterfell was still his, regardless of blood. The night before, he'd dreamed of Lyanna. Not the spirit conjured by Melisandre, but a young woman astride a gray mare, laughing in the rain, her laughter echoing into the storm. Now the living must answer for the dead's secrets. On the third morning, as dawn crept slow and pale over the horizon, Sansa found Jon by the battlements. She looked tired, her eyes ringed with shadow. Yet her voice was gentle. The lords are restless. Some say you should take the dragon banner. Others call for you to stand aside for a Stark. Now. Jon's jaw clenched. I never asked for banners. I never asked to be anyone but myself. Sansa's gaze was steady. But you are someone, Jon. You always have been. Even as Ned's bastard, you united the North. Now. She let her words hang, heavy with what could not be unsaid. Jon turned away, looking south. If I raise the dragon's banner, half the North will desert me. If I cling only to the wolf, the rest will think I'm hiding something. The dead are coming. Why must it matter who my parents were? Sansa sighed. Because it always matters. People want something to believe in. She touched his arm. Let them believe in both. Let them see wolf and dragon together. He stared at her, then nodded, almost imperceptibly. Their council that afternoon was a war of glances and words. Lord Manderley, ever practical, spoke first. Bastard or prince, Jon Snow has bled for us. I'd trust him before any Lannister or Targaryen. Lady Dustin retorted that the North had never knelt easily, least of all to southern dragons. Lyanna Mormont, fierce as ever, interrupted with a scowl. He's no southern lord. He's a Stark, and he's ours, no matter what blood flows in his veins. Arya, in the shadows, grinned her approval, eyes glinting with wolf light. Bran sat beside the hearth, hands folded in his lap, looking past them all into a distance none could see. When Jon's gaze sought him, Bran spoke quietly, the voice of memory itself. The realm was broken by secrets and lies. If you wish to unite it, you must do so openly. Tell them everything, even the things that hurt. Only then will they follow you into the night. Jon nodded. It was settled, if not resolved. By dusk, every banner in Winterfell's walls had heard the story. From Ned's oath to Lyanna's last breath. From the Tower of Joy to the snows of the Wall. Some wept. Others cursed. But most, when the fires burned low, found themselves turning their eyes to Jon, searching for something in his stance that belonged to them. It was only as the moon rose that the dragons arrived. They came from the east in a storm of wings and wind, Drogon, monstrous and black, his eyes like molten gold, and Rhaegal, green as summer moss, their bellies trailing steam in the frigid air. They circled Winterfell's towers once, twice, then landed beyond the gates with an earth-shaking rumble. Daenerys Targaryen slid from Drogon's back, cloak swirling, silver hair gleaming even in the night. She was followed by her blood riders, Grey Worm at her side. The hall filled quickly, the hush thick as snowfall. Jon stood before the fire, Daenerys at his left, Sansa at his right. Arya and Bran flanked them, a tableau of wolf and dragon, old and new. Daenerys' eyes found Jon's. "Is it true?" she asked quietly, so that only those closest could hear. He met her gaze, pain and longing warring on his face. "It is. My mother was Lyanna Stark. My father," he could barely say it, "Rhaegar Targaryen." A sharp breath, but Daenerys did not falter. "You are my blood then, my kin." Jon shook his head. "The realm will not see it that way. They will say I am a pretender, or worse." She smiled, sad and proud all at once. "The realm says many things. Let them see who we are." They turned to the hall as one. Jon's voice rang out, echoing off the ancient stones. "The Night King marches. He brings death for all, king and bastard, wolf and dragon alike. I will not ask you to kneel. I ask only that you stand. Stand for the living. Stand for the North." "Ben?" Daenerys stepped forward. "I am Daenerys Stormborn, of House Targaryen. I have come not to conquer, but to fight beside you. The living must unite, or all will perish." The crowd murmured, then cheered. Banners waving. The moment held, fragile, but true. Later, as the fires died and the hall emptied, Jon found himself alone in the Godswood, beneath the heart tree's ancient eyes. Ghost nosed his hand, whined softly. Jon knelt in the snow, closing his eyes. "What would you have me do, father?" he whispered. Not sure if he meant Ned or Rhaegar. The wind rustled the branches. Somewhere deep in the night, he fancied he heard Lyanna's voice again, soft as the snow. "Be true to yourself, Jon. That is all anyone can do." When he rose, the weight on his shoulders felt lessened, if only a little. That night, his dreams were filled with fire and shadow. He saw the wall, black and crumbling, the dead pouring through. He saw a field of battle, banners torn and burning, Arya fighting side by side with Daenerys. He saw Bran, wreathed in ravens, staring through 1,000 eyes. And most terrible of all, he saw the Night King in the crypts of Winterfell, the dead rising at his command. Lyanna's stone torn open. He woke gasping, sweat cold on his brow. He knew, with the certainty of prophecy, that the battle would come sooner than any dared hope. The next day brought scouts from the south, riders from House Arryn, House Royce, House Tarly, bearing grim tidings. The dead had crossed the last river, moving faster than thought possible. Their numbers had swelled, fallen wildlings, deserters, the garrison of Last Hearth. Jon called the banners. The North would stand, or it would fall. Preparations began in earnest. Arya drilled the archers atop the walls, her voice sharp as the wind. Sansa oversaw the stores, rationing bread and ale, making certain every child in Crone would have enough. Bran spent hours in the Godswood, lost in visions, returning each time more withdrawn. Daenerys and Jon stood together atop the walls, surveying the training grounds below. "Do you remember the first time you saw the wall?" Daenerys asked quietly. Jon nodded. "I thought it would stand forever." "Nothing stands forever." She studied his face. "I did not want this. War, death. I came to break the wheel, not become another spoke in it." He smiled, faintly. "Perhaps this is how we break it, by standing together, not against." She took his hand, and for a moment, they were simply two people, tired and frightened, reaching for warmth in the cold. That night, Melisandre called a council. They met in the Great Solar. Jon, Daenerys, Arya, Bran, Davos, Tyrion, Grey Worm. Even Theon, who had returned with what men he could from the Iron Islands. The Red Woman's eyes were like coals. "I have seen the end in my flames," she intoned. The living stand atop Winterfell, surrounded by death. Victory is possible, but at great cost. There is one among you who must face the Night King. All eyes turned to Jon. He swallowed. Why me? Melisandre's lips curled. Because you are both wolf and dragon. Because you have returned from death. Only fire and ice together can defeat the darkness. Then, a silence, thick and charged. Bran spoke, his voice far away. He will come for me. The Night King seeks the memory of the world. If I fall, so does hope. Tyrion, ever practical, interjected. Then we make our stand here. We protect Bran. We give the Night King what he wants. Bait. But bait he cannot swallow. Jon nodded, heart pounding. We fight for the living. We make our stand. Plans were drawn. Dragons to patrol the skies, Dothraki on the flanks, unsullied at the gates, wildlings along the walls. Arya vanished, gathering her own shadows. The North prepared, as it always had, for the long night. In the final hours before the attack, Jon wandered the halls, restless. He found Sam in the library, frantically sorting scrolls. Sam? Jon asked. Do you believe all this? The prophecy, my birth, any of it? Sam's eyes shone with quiet conviction. I believe you're the best chance we've got. Not because you're a Targaryen, because you're Jon Snow. They clasped hands. In that moment, Jon felt something he had not felt since boyhood. Hope. Night fell, black and absolute. The horns blew. The dead had come. They appeared first as shadows at the tree line, then as a horde. Pale, silent, unstoppable. Their eyes blue as old ice. Giants lumbered among them. Whites poured over the snow, heedless of arrows, of flame. The dragons took to the sky, fire lighting the night. On the ramparts, Jon fought with sword and will, Daenerys soaring above him, raining fire. Arya moved through the chaos like death herself. Sansa stood with the wounded, comforting, commanding. The Night King appeared at the edge of the Godswood, cold and implacable. He strode through fire as if it were mist. Jon ran to meet him, long claws shining with frost. Their swords met, black against blue, the clash ringing through Winterfell. You cannot win. The Night King whispered, his voice like the shattering of glaciers. Jon pressed forward, rage and love fueling every blow. I am not alone. The battle raged around them. Bran, seated at the heart tree, eyes rolled back, gorged into ravens. Arya struck from the shadows. Daenerys screamed defiance from above. At the last, as the Night King raised his hand to end it all, Lyanna's voice filled Jon's mind. The truth is your shield. He remembered the fires, Melisandre's words, the promise of the living. With a cry, Jon drove Longclaw through the Night King's heart. Blue fire erupted. The dead fell. The silence that followed was total. Dawn broke. Slow and red, the living stood amid the ruin, battered but breathing. In the days that followed, they buried their dead with honor. The banners of wolf and dragon flew side by side over Winterfell. Daenerys stood with Jon on the battlements, her hand in his. Is it over? She asked. Jon gazed out over the fields, the snow melting beneath the first warm sun. For now. Arya smiled, stained and grinning, ghost at her heels. Sansa nodded, proud. Bran's eyes were distant, but peaceful. Melisandre vanished that night, her work done. Jon knelt beneath the heart tree, whispering thanks to those who had come before. He thought of Lyanna, of Ned, of all the secrets that had shaped him. He was wolf and dragon. He was hope. The song of ice and fire had found its voice, and the North, scarred, grieving, undefeated, sang it into the dawn. Okay. Winterfell's battered walls still bore the scars of the night's horrors. Ash dusted the snow. The scent of burned flesh and old blood haunted every corridor. Yet beneath the scars, a different energy began to ripple. A quiet, trembling promise that life would continue, as it always had in the North. no matter what ghosts had walked the halls. The first days of Aftermath moved with a strange slowness, as if the whole of Winterfell exhaled after holding its breath for generations. The dead were gathered, the weirwood's crimson leaves fluttering above each burial as names were spoken and tears fell. Jon himself lowered many into the earth. Brothers of the Night's Watch, wildlings, northern lords, and those who had followed Daenerys across the world. No lord nor peasant, no man nor woman, was denied a place in the burial grounds. On the third day, when the last pyre burned low, Jon stood in the godswood before the heart tree, a silent Sansa at his side. The snow had begun to melt beneath the sun, tiny rivulets running down the grooves in the weirwood's face. We survived, he thought, but at what cost? Sansa seemed to sense his thoughts. They look to you now more than ever, she said quietly. Not just as a Stark, as something more. Jon shook his head. They look for someone who can promise them a future. I don't know what I am, Sansa. Not Stark, not Targaryen, not truly, not to them. And now, she turned, her cloak trailing frost. You are both. That is what makes you stronger. That is what makes you theirs. The truth, Jon, is the only thing that will save us now. In the days that followed, ravens flew. Some to the south, some west, some even to the distant east. Word of the Night King's defeat and the true parentage of Jon, Jaehaerys Targaryen spread, reaching Dorne. The Reach, the Stormlands, even the charred bones of King's Landing. The response was a confusion of awe, anger, and fear. From Old Town, Samwell Tarly returned with a cadre of maesters, their gray robes flapping in the cold. They came to tend wounds, record histories, and, some said, spy for the Citadel. Gilly brought the children. The sight of Jon holding Sam's infant daughter softened even the hardest wildling. Daenerys too was changed. Her eyes lingered on Jon and counsel, softer than before, her questions less sharp. There was no more talk of burning cities or breaking wheels, only rebuilding. She rode Drogon across the battered north, helping with food, listening to those who approached with trembling hopes. The people's wariness was slowly thawing, but for every grateful glance, there was another shadowed by the memory of fire. One dawn, when the sky burned pink and gold, Arya found Jon on the battlements. She leaned beside him, dagger in hand. "They're saying you'll be king," she said, as if commenting on the weather. Jon shook his head, smiling wryly. "They say many things. Would you want it?" she asked, studying his face as she might an opponent's feint. He hesitated. "If it brings peace, if it means something better for all of them, maybe. But I never wanted power for its own sake. I never wanted to sit on a throne. I only ever wanted to protect our family, our people." And then, Arya sheathed her blade. "You've always done what was right, Jon, even when it hurt." She left with a squeeze of his shoulder, her footsteps vanishing into the morning. As spring crept into the north, letters arrived, one after another, from Yara Greyjoy, swearing the Iron Islands' independence, but promising ships to any alliance Jon might lead. From Gendry Baratheon, the newly legitimized Lord of Storm's End, offering the loyalty of the Storm Lords, in gratitude to Arya and Jon both. Even from the Martells of Sunspear, cautious but intrigued, their words guarded but their seal intact. But with support came suspicion. Cersei Lannister's. Spectre haunted every negotiation, her legacy a wound still healing in the south. Some lords whispered that a dragon in the north was only ever a conqueror. Others remembered Jon's defense of the wall and saw hope. The lords gathered in the great hall for a council unlike any before. Sansa presided beside Jon, her poise undeniable. Daenerys attended with Melisandre and Grey Worm, her head high, but her gaze always finding Jon's. Arya and Bran watched from the side, the last of the old Starks. Lord Manderley, beard bristling, spoke first. "The south is broken, but the north is united. Our armies are tired, but our will is strong. We must decide if we stand apart or take our place in the new world. Lady Mormont, wounded but unbroken, nodded. Jon Snow led us through darkness. I would follow him again, king or no. From the Vale, Lord Royce rose. There must be one realm, or there will be none. The dead nearly ended us. We are all bound together now by blood and pain. Daenerys spoke, her voice firm. Let the realm choose its own ruler. Let each lord and lady have a voice. I do not claim the throne unless you ask it of me. Jon stood, hands open, the firelight glinting off Longclaw at his hip. If you would have me lead, it is not for dragons or wolves, but for all the living. I cannot promise a world without pain. But I can promise this: I will never turn from you. Not as a Targaryen, not as a Stark, not as a man. They debated through the afternoon, old wounds and new hopes wrestling for control. When at last the shadows deepened and the fires burned low, the lords came forward one by one. Some bent the knee, some only nodded, but all pledged their loyalty. To the north, to the living, to Jon. That night, Daenerys found Jon in the quiet of the Godswood, where the fireflies danced above new green shoots. Do you trust them? She asked. He was quiet. Some, yes, but trust grows slow in cold ground. She touched his face, gentle and searching. And do you trust me? He took her hand in his. You have changed, Daenerys. You have listened. That is all I ever wanted, from any ruler. Nendrawan. Their lips met beneath the boughs, tentative but hopeful. In the hush that followed, the ghosts of Winterfell seemed at peace. In the weeks that followed, Winterfell transformed. Masons and carpenters from the Reach repaired the shattered walls. Blacksmiths forged new swords, not for war, but for honor. Daenerys and Jon worked side by side, settling disputes, forging new alliances. Bran mapped old tunnels and new roads in the Maester's ledgers. Arya rode beyond the castle, seeking out survivors, guiding them home. Sansa wrote letters in her careful hand, binding bannermen to the new cause. A council was formed, lords and ladies from every region, not just to serve the king, but to check him, to balance fire and ice. For the first time, the people of the realm felt they had a voice, however small. Melisandre, her red cloak faded, prepared to leave. Jon met her at dawn by the east gate. Your work is done? He asked. She smiled. Weary. My purpose here is fulfilled. The darkness was beaten back. The living have chosen their own path. Jon bowed his head. Thank you for bringing my mother, for the truth. Melisandre. She studied him, her gaze soft. Truth is a sword, Jon Snow. It can wound, but it can also defend. She left as she had arrived, alone, vanishing into the morning mist. In the summer that followed, peace returned, slow as the thaw. Harvests flourished, the fields golden and rich. Ravens no longer bore news of war, but of trade, marriages, births. Children played in the courtyards, their laughter bright against stone and sky. In the quiet of his new solar, Jon sat with letters piled high. Ghost curled at his feet. He read one from Gendry, plans for rebuilding the Stormlands, a request for advice on settling feuds among his new bannermen. Another from Sam in Old Town, hopeful tidings of the Citadel's reforms, and news that Gilly's son had learned his letters. A missive from Dorne spoke of peace, not threat. Daenerys entered, dropping a bundle of wildflowers on his desk. You should walk the fields, she chided, teasing. The people need to see you in the sun, not hunched over parchment. He smiled, setting aside his quill. Let them see us both. They strolled the ramparts, their shadows stretching across stone. Peasants cheered. A mother pressed a loaf of bread into Jon's hands, her eyes bright with gratitude. A crippled boy hobbled forward to show Daenerys a wooden dragon he had carved himself. Later, beneath the heart tree, they spoke of the future, of children, of what kind of world they might inherit, of justice and mercy, of remembering every price paid. Jon touched Daenerys' hand, eyes full of the past and future entwined. We are both the children of sorrow, but perhaps our children will not need to be them. She nodded, her smile trembling, hope and grief forever joined. As the sun dipped low, Arya joined them, fresh from the wild, a dire wolf running at her heels. "I've seen the edge of the world," she said, grinning. "And it's not so different from here. Cold, beautiful, alive. There are always more mysteries." Jon laughed, the sound deep and honest. "Then let's solve them. Together." And so the North, indeed, the whole of Westeros, entered a new age, born of blood, but blossoming with possibility. A council, not a crown. A promise, not a prophecy. The wolf and the dragon, fire and ice, no longer warring but woven together. Sometimes, on quiet nights, Jon wandered the God's Wood alone, remembering Lyanna's touch, Ned's stern love, the thousand choices that led him here. He listened to the wind in the leaves, to the ghosts who watched, and, at last, forgave. He was not only Jon Snow, nor only Jaehaerys Targaryen. He was the North's hope and the world's chance for peace. His mother's sacrifice and his father's dream. He was the shield against darkness, not because of birthright, but because he chose to be. And somewhere, deep in the roots of Winterfell, the old gods stirred and smiled. The song of ice and fire at last had found its harmony. Summer deepened over the north, and with each day, life unfurled with fresh determination in the shadow of old grief. Winterfell, battered and remade, pulsed with the ceaseless movement of the living. Banners snapped in the breeze, flocks of children raced beneath the archways, and grain carts rumbled through the gates, bringing promise to pantries that once echoed with want. The God's Wood flourished with new green, and the pools sparkled clear, the heart trees' face peaceful at last. Yet Jon found no peace, not truly. Each dawn brought a new petition, a new worry, a new consequence of truth. Some lords of the North wore their loyalty openly. Lord Manderly, Lady Mormont, the Glovers, and the Flints. Others, like Lord Serwyn and Lady Dustin, harbored reservations, their words honeyed but watchful, their fealty conditional. Some remembered Aegon's dragons and the burning of Harrenhal. Some clung to ancient wrongs, and not even the Night King's defeat could wash away their old suspicions of Southern blood. Jon met each with the patience learned from Ned and the hard clarity of the Wall. He walked among the people, listening, helping, settling disputes as best he could. He rode to villages burned in the fighting, hearing tales of loss and endurance. He stood in icy rivers with fishermen, sharing simple bread and stories. He supped at tables with wildlings and northern lords, mending wounds that had not all been made by the dead. It was Sansa's wisdom, Arya's candor, and Bran's eerie calm that gave him strength. At council, Sansa's words cut clean, never cruel, always firm. Arya prowled the lands, rooting out the last of the broken bands left from the long night, ensuring justice with her own cold brand. Bran sat silent in council, his presence a silent warning that secrets, in this new age, would not long endure. In time, the northern lords grudgingly conceded that Jon's strength was not just his blood, but the unity his family offered. A unity hammered out by fire and frost. When the southern lords came north that autumn, Jon received them in the Great Hall. Lord Gendry Baratheon, now broad-shouldered and sure, brought with him the colors of Storm's End. Lord Tyrion Lannister, once a fugitive, now the voice of what was left of House Lannister, came as Daenerys' friend and counselor. The Tyrells had all but vanished, their lands swallowed by the Reach survivors, and the ambitions of House Tarly, who sent Sir Samwell to plead for peace, not war. From the Vale, Lord Robert Arryn came, guided by Lord Royce's steady hand. They came not to pay fealty, but to decide the realm's fate. Jon watched them with wary eyes, remembering how easily alliance could curdle into rivalry, how quickly old wounds could fester beneath banners of peace. The great council that followed was the first of its kind. For days, Winterfell's hall rang with voices, each house sending their heir, each knight and lady given leave to speak. There were bitter reminders of the wars, debates about the power of the new council, and anxious whispers about succession. Some urged Jon to take the Iron Throne, to march south and restore a broken realm. Others feared Daenerys dragons, even as they healed the fields and frightened away bandits. Jon listened, but did not command. When finally they pressed him for his word, he stood before the hearth, the room heavy with expectation. "I will not be king of ashes," he said simply. "I have no wish to rule from a throne of skulls. The Iron Throne has brought only blood and ruin. Let us forge something new, a council of lords and ladies, a voice for every house. Let us lead together and choose a new king or queen, only if the realm asks it. No more secrets. No more fire and blood." Daenerys stepped beside him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "I will not be queen by right of conquest. If the realm wishes for my help, I will give it. If it does not, I will serve in other ways. I have seen too much death to wish for more." It was Sansa who spoke the words that lingered. "Let us break the wheel. Let the North remain free, as we always were. But let us stand with the realm in peace. Let each kingdom choose for itself, but meet in council for the good of all." Now, the room erupted. Some in approval, some in anger. Simply stunned that the world might change so swiftly. But it was Arya who quelled the chaos. She rose, her sword on her hip, her words sharp as Valyrian steel. "You've seen what division brings. Dead men, burnt fields, shattered walls. I've seen the edges of the world, and it's the same everywhere. People just want to live. If you want another war, fight it. But you'll have to fight the living, not the dead." Men now. That night, Jon walked the battlements with Daenerys, the cold air laced with wood smoke and anticipation. "You could have had it, all of it," Daenerys murmured, her hand finding his. He shook his head, a sad smile on his lips. "It was never mine. It was never anyone's. Maybe that's the lesson in all of this. No throne can hold all the hopes of so many." She kissed him then, slow and grateful. "You are wiser than you know, Jon Snow." He pulled her close, gazing out at the land he loved. The land he had saved and let himself imagine. Just for that moment. That peace was not a dream. Through autumn and into the winter's first frost, Westeros rebuilt itself. The council sent envoys between the kingdoms, sharing food and knowledge. Dorne agreed to open its ports to trade, the Reach sent grain north, and the Stormlands pledged timber and ships. The Riverlands, long divided, began to heal as Arya and Gendry led missions to find lost children and reunite broken families. Bran journeyed south to Old Town, where he met with the Maesters, speaking of histories lost in futures yet unwritten. Samwell Tarly was made Grand Maester. His reforms swift and sweeping. No more blind allegiance to old ways, but a study of all magics and sciences, a pursuit of truth. Sansa ruled the North with growing confidence, her councils bustling with voices from all corners. Arya traveled as envoy and scout, her name whispered in awe from White Harbor to Sunspear. Daenerys became a symbol, not a queen, a voice for the voiceless, a rider of dragons, a mother to those left orphaned by war. Children flocked to her, the broken and hungry, and she found healing in their laughter. Jon devoted himself to the land, riding between villages, listening and learning. Sometimes he traveled alone, just Ghost at his side, remembered in every fireside tale, every market song. People called him king in the North, but he answered only to Jon. When storms threatened, he worked with farmers to save the crops. When fever struck, he was the first in the sick tents, bringing maesters and remedies. Yet for all his deeds, the memory of that night, the return of Lyanna, the revelation of his blood, never left him. It was both his armor and his chain. He visited her cairn often, bringing wildflowers, or simply sitting in silence. Sometimes he thought he heard her voice on the wind, proud, sad, always loving. It was on such a night, the sky scattered with stars, that Bran returned, his cloak dusted with southern road dust. Jon met him in the Godswood. "I've seen what comes next," Bran said quietly, eyes half in the world and half in the unknown. "It won't be easy. Old powers stir in Essos. The world is not done with dragons or with magic. But for now, there is peace." Jon gripped his brother's shoulder. "That's all we can hope for. A little peace." Bran smiled. A rare thing. And it was like sunlight after rain. "And you, Jon? What will you do with peace?" Jon looked toward the heart tree, the red leaves rustling in the night wind. "I'll live. I'll love. I'll lead if they'll have me. I'll make sure their sacrifices meant something. In time." Spring returned in earnest, and Winterfell hosted a feast for all the realms. A celebration of peace, of survival, of unity. The hall rang with laughter and song, the tables heaped with food. Children danced beneath banners bearing both direwolf and dragon. Old wounds were spoken of, but so too were new hopes, new beginnings. Gendry and Arya announced their intent to wed. Storm and wolf, steel and wind. Sansa presided, her joy fierce and proud. Daenerys sat beside Jon, their hands entwined, the promise of their bond plain for all to see. Bran spoke the blessing, his words gentle, his sight deep. "May the memory of the dead guide the living. May the song of ice and fire echo forever in the halls of the just." And so, as the years spun on, the realm endured. Not perfect, never perfect, but better, kinder, more aware of its own fragility and strength. Jon visited Lyanna's cairn less often, but never forgot. Each time he knelt there, he whispered thanks. For life, for truth, for the future. And always, on the wind, came her answer. Soft, proud, eternal. The realm lived. The wheel was broken. And beneath the boughs of Winterfell, where old gods watched and new ones were made, the song that had begun with fire and sorrow ended in peace, and a promise that the darkness would never again go unchallenged so long as there were those willing to face it together. Ka. Late spring brought the scent of grass and wet stone to Winterfell. Days were long. Skies impossibly wide, and the people began to shake off the fear that had ruled them so long. Each sunrise was brighter than the last, and yet Jon never forgot that such peace had been dearly bought. There was no way to unmake all the scars, but perhaps, he often thought, there was a way to heal. He spent his mornings walking the rebuilt walls, nodding to guards and masons, sharing a word or a smile with the stable boy or the cook who carried fresh bread across the yard. The great hall was always busy, full of the lords and ladies who had gathered for the realm's first council in generations. The council did not always agree, and sometimes the debate grew heated, but Jon welcomed their voices. Too many years, too many kings had ruled by fear and silence. He preferred to listen, to trust that truth, once spoken, would do more good than harm. Sansa flourished in her rule as Lady of Winterfell. She oversaw grain supplies, organized the next year's plantings, and met with the lords and small folk alike, weaving every thread of the north together. At her side, Arya was a wild wind. One day riding out to hunt with the Stark men, the next day training archers in the yard, then slipping away for days to return with information no one else could have gotten. Bran, meanwhile, grew quieter as the seasons turned, spending hours with the ravens or in the Godswood, his mind far afield, his voice now and then touching on some mystery no one else could see. Jon spent many evenings with Daenerys. They met in the solar or beneath the stars, speaking of what the world could be, not just what it was. The realm's first council was her dream as much as his, and she never let him forget it. They spoke of justice, of mercy, of finding a place for those left behind. With Grey Worm and Melisandre at her side, Daenerys sent word to the farthest corners of Westeros, heralds carrying the offer of protection to all freed slaves and small folk. promising that this new age would belong to the living, not only to lords. Yet even in peacetime, trouble brewed. Discontent lingered among some of the northern lords. Some grumbled that Winterfell was too full of southerners. Some accused Jon of forgetting his roots, or feared Daenerys dragons, even as the queen herself walked the market and spoke gently with their children. Jon listened patiently, but sometimes his patience wore thin. He missed the simplicity of the wall, the clear division between friend and foe. Politics, he had come to learn, was a shadow war fought with half-truths and memories. One dusk, as Jon walked the battlements, Lyanna Mormont joined him. She had grown taller since the war, her face sharper, her eyes as fierce as ever. Some of the clans are restless, she told him, skipping any greeting. They say you favor the South, that the North should govern itself. I am the North, Jon answered quietly. I was raised here. My blood is half wolf, half dragon, but my heart is all Winterfell. Lyanna's mouth twisted in a knowing half-smile. Then prove it. Ride to the high passes. Speak to the mountain clans yourself. Take Arya. Show them you haven't forgotten who you are. Jon met her gaze, then nodded. Very well. I'll leave at first light. He found Arya later in the training yard, spinning needle in her hand. He didn't even need to ask. She grinned, eyes bright with anticipation, and said, "About time we got out of the hall." They set out before dawn, accompanied only by 2 guards and Ghost, the direwolf padding silent in the shadows. The air was sharp, fragrant with pine and earth. They rode north and west, into the foothills where mountain clans had hidden for centuries, old oaths and old grudges alike clinging to them like mist. At each village, Jon and Arya dismounted, meeting the heads of the clans. Tough, weather-beaten folk who measured a man by the way he met their eyes. Jon broke bread with them, shared news of the council, and listened to their worries about lost sheep, raided crops, and wildlings crossing old boundaries. Arya listened too, quiet as a shadow, learning more with her eyes than her ears. At night, they gathered round great fires, Arya telling tales of her travels beyond the narrow sea, Jon describing the battles they'd survived. A week into their journey, at a village nestled beneath a broken tower, a woman pressed a loaf of bread into Jon's hands. "My lord, we lost so much. My eldest died at the wall. My husband at Winterfell, defending your sister. All I want is to know that it was not for nothing, that you remember." Jon squeezed her hand. "I remember every man and woman who fell. I carry their names with me. This peace, they made it possible." He left gifts at every cairn, promising to send masons to mend their roofs, maesters to tend their wounds, and always, always, a listening ear. When they returned to Winterfell, the mood had shifted. Arya went straight to Sansa, dropping a pouch full of clan tokens on her desk and grinning. "They'll follow him anywhere," she said. "They just needed to see he still belonged." Jon's absence, short as it was, had made his presence stronger than any speech or decree. But peace is a living thing, fragile as spring. By early summer, word came from the south. Bandits near Harrenhal, Dothraki wounded in the Reach, uneasy rumors from King's Landing. Daenerys listened to every message with furrowed brow. Tyrion, newly returned from the Westerlands, brought more tidings. Rumors of a golden fleet assembling in Old Town, a gathering of exiled lords, and whispers of men who had vanished during the war now returned, vowing vengeance. "We must answer, Jon," Daenerys urged one night, her voice taut as a drawn bow. "If the council is to mean anything, we must ride south together, show them that this peace is not weakness." Jon agreed, but with a heavy heart. He knew the people needed to see their leaders stand as one, yet he dreaded the dangers of the south, the heat, the intrigue, the memories of fire and blood. On the day they departed, the whole of Winterfell turned out to see them off. Sansa pressed Joan's hand, her voice quiet. "Bring her back safe," she said, nodding toward Daenerys. "And come home." Arya stood beside Gendry, whose laugh now came more easily. She winked at Jon. "Don't let the South change you, brother." With Ghost loping at his side, and Daenerys riding Drogon overhead, Jon led the council's party south. They passed fields green with grain, towns rebuilding, and for a time it almost seemed as if the world could be healed. But the closer they drew to King's Landing, the more the scars showed. Blackened stones where wildfire had once burned. Ruins where people now lived among ashes. In King's Landing, the council gathered again, this time in the shadow of the broken Red Keep. Lords and ladies from every corner of the realm came to witness, to argue, to test whether this fragile peace could hold. Jon and Daenerys stood at the center, Sansa and Arya at their sides, Tyrion and Sam counseling in their different ways. There were challenges, petty feuds, questions of land and title, resentment from old Lannister loyalists, suspicion of dragons. Daenerys faced them all with quiet resolve, never raising her voice, always meeting their anger with calm. Jon, for his part, was a bridge, a northern wolf among southern lions, steady and plain-spoken, unafraid to say what others would not. On the fourth night, a riot broke out in Flea Bottom. Dispossessed men railing at the council, flames licking the edges of the city's new markets. Jon rode out with the city guard, Ghost at his heels. He did not carry Longclaw, only a plain sword at his side. He spoke to the mob not as a king, but as a brother in arms. "We fought together against the dead," he told them, his voice carrying over the jeers. "You want justice? You will have it. You want food? We will find it. But there will be no more war. No more kings and queens who rule by fear. The realm is yours, as much as mine." Then it was enough. The crowd quieted. The city guard held back their swords, and the riot ended with no more blood spilled. In the aftermath, a delegation of the city's poorest came to the council. They spoke their grievances, their hopes, and for the first time in living memory, their words were heard. That night, Daenerys found Jon on the ramparts of the ruined keep, the city sprawling before them, lanterns glowing in the dark. "You could have ruled them all, you know," she said softly, "but you chose something harder." Jon shook his head. "If peace is to last, it can't belong to one man or one family. It must belong to everyone." She touched his cheek, her eyes shining. "That's why they follow you. That's why I do." They kissed in the moonlight, the promise of their union as real as the city below. The council endured, the peace held, and the realm drew its first steady breath in a generation. When Jon returned to Winterfell that autumn, the leaves were turning gold and red. Sansa greeted him with a smile that was all relief. Arya had returned from her travels, Gendry at her side. Bran waited in the Godswood, his eyes distant but clear. Jon knelt before the heart tree one last time, whispering his thanks to Lyanna and Ned, to all those who had come before. Then he rose, the burden of old secrets lifted, the future no longer a thing to fear. The wheel was broken, the realm endured, and as the first snow of winter fell again, Jon stood atop the walls, Daenerys beside him, the north at peace, the south at hope, and the world, for the first time in living memory, truly awake. In the deepening cold of late autumn, with Winterfell's stones still warm from summer's sun, and the air sharp with the coming frost, the world settled into its new shape. What had begun with the resurrection of a secret, the truth of Jon's parentage, Lyanna's voice returned from the dead, now pulsed through every vein of the realm. Each day, the story of wolf and dragon together seemed less a miracle and more a memory, hardening into the bedrock of a new age. Jon awoke before dawn most days, slipping from Daenerys' side while the sky was still star-streaked, the castle quiet but for the muffled tramp of sentries and the restless pacing of Ghost in the yard. He found comfort in these silent hours, as if only in the hush before the world woke could he remember what it was to be simply himself. He walked the Godswood, breathing in the scent of cold earth, frost-dusted weirwood leaves, and memory. He would kneel before the heart tree and whisper the names of the dead. Lyanna, Ned, Rob, even his old brothers from the wall. Each syllable a promise that their stories would not be forgotten. The council governed with steadier hands now. Sansa's wisdom and Arya's certainty. Bran's glimpses of what was and what might be. Samwell's tireless hunger for knowledge. Together with Daenerys and Jon, they formed a rare kind of leadership. One built not on blood or threat, but on shared burden. There were still quarrels. Disputes over rivers and fields, old resentments between house and house. But even the loudest grumbling had a different edge now. Jon saw it in their eyes as they argued. The fear that once stalked every gathering had lessened, replaced by a cautious hope. In the south, Gendry Baratheon flourished as Lord of Storm's End, sending grain and ships north, his bond with Arya making him a favored ally. In the Riverlands, Arya herself oversaw a network of orphanages, her face familiar to every child she'd rescued, her legend growing as quietly as the new wheat in autumn fields. Sansa, now called the Wise Wolf by the Smallfolk, kept the North fed and safe through cunning bargains and tireless vigilance. The council met at Winterfell, through the harvest. When they weren't debating, they listened to travelers. A merchant from Bravos with tales of distant peace. A maester from Old Town with warnings of new sicknesses on the wind. A wildling who'd come south, seeking refuge and trade, his tongue awkward, but his gratitude honest. Daenerys moved through these meetings like a queen without a throne. Her laughter rare but precious, her dragons more the stuff of awe than fear. Rhaegal nested on the rocky bluffs beyond the Godswood, while Drogon spent hours circling above, his shadow streaking the ground and sending sheep and children alike fleeing for the safety of the walls. No one in the north would ever quite trust a dragon, but none could doubt the peace they brought. It was Tyrion who noticed the change first. "You've done something I never thought possible, Jon," he said one night as the council broke for supper, wine warming his cheeks. "You've made hope a habit." Jon smiled, but his gaze drifted to the window where the last rays of sun touched the distant hills. "Hope is fragile," he said quietly. "It needs tending." He tended it the best way he knew, by living among the people. He helped rebuild barns, listened to the complaints of the small folk, joined hunts, attended births and funerals alike. It was Sansa who urged him to hold more feasts, and so the halls of Winterfell echoed with music and laughter, banners of wolf and dragon flying together. Daenerys grew into this peace with more difficulty. Some nights, Jon would wake to find her staring into the dark, her hands clenched in the furs. She confessed her fears, of not belonging, of never being forgiven for the fires she had loosed in the south, of the world moving on without her. "They remember me as a conqueror, Jon, not a savior, not a builder, sometimes not even a woman." Jon would gather her close, his words gentle. "You are all of those things. More. The world always remembers its monsters more clearly than its healers. But it is the healing that endures." With each season, Daenerys built her own place in the north. She sponsored a school for orphaned girls, taught by the old septa who had survived the sack of King's Landing. She rode to villages to mediate disputes, gave coin and counsel to farmers, and welcomed wildlings into her retinue. Slowly the people came to see not just the Dragon Queen, but the woman who knelt to speak with them at eye level, who smiled at their children, who mourned their dead. Through all of this, Arya never stayed long. Her marriage to Gendry was a union of wild hearts. They ranged across the land together, sometimes for weeks, returning with stories and maps, sketches of new roads and reports of unrest. When she came home, she brought news. Pirates on the narrow sea, a new bandit chief in the Riverlands, whispers of unrest in Essos. But she always brought laughter too, and her presence made the north feel boundless and young. Bran remained a mystery even to his kin. He spoke less and less, his eyes clouded with visions. Yet when he did speak, it was always with clarity, urging Jon to send grain south to the Reach during a late frost, warning Daenerys of a summer fever that would sweep through the orphanages, quietly urging Sansa to befriend the wildling chiefs on the frontier. Some called him the last Greenseer. Most simply called him Stark. Late that year, as the snows returned and the rivers slowed with ice, News came from the Vale. A sudden death, Lord Royce lost to a fever, and young Robert Arryn left lordless, his advisors fracturing into bitter camps. Sansa volunteered to travel south, accompanied by Arya and a company of northern knights. "Let them see how the north keeps its promises," Sansa said, lacing her cloak. "The time for swords is over. We must bind the realm with trust, not fear." "Man." Jon and Daenerys watched them ride out at sunrise, the banners of Wolf and Arryn fluttering together, Arya already halfway down the road before the rest had mounted. Days turned to weeks, and Winterfell fell into a quiet rhythm. The first flakes of real snow dusted the fields. Jon walked the battlements with Ghost at his side, watched the farmers hurry to bring in the last of the harvest, listened to the children's shouts as they built snow forts near the inner wall. Daenerys often joined him, her arm warm around his waist, her smile growing easier with each day. It was during one such morning that Sam rode in from Old Town, wind-chilled and breathless. He carried scrolls and a worried look, setting his things down by the council table and drawing Jon aside. "There are new reports from Essos," he said, lowering his voice. "Something stirring among the Volantines. Ships gathering, gold changing hands, old mercenary companies recruiting again." Jon frowned. The Golden Company. Not them, at least, not openly. But there are rumors of a claimant, someone calling themselves the True Dragon, born from the blood of old Valyria. Most think it's just another pretender, but the world is restless, Jon. Magic stirs in places we thought forgotten. Some say even the priests of Aralor are seeking a new champion. Damn. Daenerys heard this last, her face darkening with old wounds. "Let them come," she said, but her hand trembled in Jon's. "The world is always searching for fire, Jon. Sometimes, all we can do is be ready for the storm." Jon squeezed her hand. "We'll face it together. The realm stands, because we stand. And we have learned, haven't we, that secrets do not stay buried." Thou. Winter settled over the land, and the world grew quiet, but never still. Sansa sent word from the Vale that peace was holding. If just. Arya's letters described mountains and laughter, Gendry's plans for new roads, and tales of a new harvest festival in the Riverlands. Bran's ravens flew to all corners of the realm, bearing messages of warning and hope. On the longest night of the year, Jon stood in the Godswood, the snow falling thick and silent, Ghost at his side. He knelt before the heart tree, closed his eyes, and whispered a prayer. Not for war, not for victory, but for peace, for strength to endure whatever storm would come. In the morning, Daenerys met him by the window, her arms full of new parchment, her hair wild with sleep. "There are plans to make," she said, her voice bright and sure. "A school for the wildling children, a granary for the southern villages. The world won't fix itself, you know." Jon laughed, letting her pull him back into the living. "No, it won't. But we can keep mending it, piece by piece." Da. And so they did. Season by season. The realm endured. Storms came and went. New threats rose and fell. But never again did the world tip into darkness. Not while Wolf and Dragon guarded its heart. Not while the lessons of Lyanna's resurrection, and the truths it had forced into the light, echoed through every chamber and every child born beneath the banners of Winterfell. The Song of Ice and Fire was no longer a prophecy, nor a secret. Just the slow, stubborn music of people, building something better out of what remained. The deep midwinter of the north arrived with a beauty and a danger that belonged only to that hard country. Ice latticed the windows of Winterfell. Rime climbed the stones, and every breath rose in a cloud before the mouth. The Godswood was a place of frozen silence, the heart tree's red leaves half buried in a quilt of new snow, its trunk crusted white. Even the dragons, fierce though they were, took to sleeping close to the walls, their bellies steaming against the hoarfrost, exhaling long trails of smoke into the still, colorless sky. But within the walls, life burned. The castle pulsed with warmth and sound. Feasts in the great hall. The laughter of children. The low voices of the council planning and debating. The new world Jon and Daenerys were building together was tested daily by the ordinary stubbornness of people. Old rivalries, new disputes, a marriage here, a feud there, a shepherd's complaint about a lost ewe or a merchant's plea for coin. It was not the glorious impossible war that had nearly destroyed them. It was the quiet, relentless labor of peace. Jon cherished these labors, even as they wearied him. He relished the rhythm of waking before dawn, pacing the frost-marbled battlements with Ghost, or hearing Arya step behind him in the yard. Every day demanded a piece of him. His patience, his justice, his memory of all the blood that had been shed to win this ordinary peace. Daenerys' strength was more visible now. She grew steadily into her place, learning to speak with the same care she once reserved for dragons, listening as a queen never had when she bore the weight of exile and war. She worked with Sansa to coordinate relief in the worst-hit villages, and in a gesture that shocked the lords, gave wildlings new land in the gift, planting the first seed of trust. She sat among the children when the old Septa taught letters, often letting them braid her hair or teach her northern rhymes. The people began to speak her name less with fear and more with respect, even affection. The castle's halls echoed with new sounds. There were always travelers, envoys from Dorne and the Vale, Dornishmen with their bright silks, and the practical quiet knights of the Eyrie, even a few ironborn with salt still in their beards. Some came to judge, others to learn, all to see if the new world was more than rumor. Jon always welcomed them, giving every lord and knight and trader the same attention. He made it known that Winterfell's doors were open to any who came in peace, whether they wore furs, silks, or rags. Winter itself became a test. Storms battered the keep, and roads were lost beneath drifts. There were hungry mouths to feed and sickness to tend. On the coldest nights, Jon worked with the masons and carpenters, patching roofs and digging out the old storerooms. Daenerys rode Rhaegal over the snow to carry medicines to outlying hamlets, her cloak streaming, her face red from the cold. Arya led hunting parties that brought in hares and deer, and Sansa worked with the cooks to stretch the food stores. Bran sent his ravens far and wide, bringing back news of every danger. A fever here, a collapsed bridge there, a pack of wolves too close to a village. Their council met almost nightly, the table always crowded. Sansa, as practical as ever. Sam, wise and eager. Arya, restless. Daenerys, thoughtful and commanding. Gendry, grinning and quick with a joke. Tyrion, sharp-tongued, missing little. Bran, speaking rarely but always to the heart of the matter. The work was never finished, and that was how they knew it was real. Peace, Sansa liked to say, was like mending a torn banner. Never finished, always worth the needle. The feasts of midwinter were grander than ever before. Every house under Winterfell's protection sent what they could: barrels of ale, honey cakes, venison, spiced apples. The wildlings contributed smoked fish, dried berries, tales of the far north. Daenerys and Jon presided over the tables as equals, toasts rising for wolf and dragon. Arya led the children in games. Sam told stories of Old Town. Bran listened, smiling in his quiet way, as if he saw the future blooming from the laughter in the hall. In the heart of one long night, Jon stood on the parapet with Daenerys beside him, her hair silver in the moonlight, the courtyard far below aglow with lanterns and torchlight. They spoke quietly of the children born that year, of plans for new roads in the spring, of the slow, stubborn work of healing old wounds. "Do you regret it?" she asked suddenly, her breath a white wisp. "All you gave up to hold this together?" Jon shook his head, a small smile curving his lips. "I think, for the first time, I understand what Father meant when he spoke of duty as an honor. I regret every life lost, every wound we could not heal. But not this. Not the chance to make it matter." "Then so." She nodded, and they watched the snow fall together, the world below hushed and whole. Rumors from the wider world still found their way north. Ships sighted off the western coast, banners unfurled in Essos, letters from Old Town hinting at the birth of new cults and the death of old ones. Tyrion kept a ledger of every whisper, and warned Jon and Daenerys not to trust too easily in the quiet. The world remembers power, my friends. Never let it grow jealous of peace. But Jon was learning how to meet these threats. How to trust. How to build. How to listen. He sent envoys to the free cities, inviting trade, offering passage for any who wished to settle. He wrote to the Prince of Dorne, to the Iron Bank, to the High Septon, forging ties not with swords, but with the memory of common struggle. Daenerys joined him, her letters full of hope and hard-earned humility. Through it all, Jon's mind often wandered to the moment Lyanna's voice broke the silence of the grave. He knew now what she had given him. Not a claim, not a throne, but the courage to speak the truth, no matter the cost. He thought of Ned's silent kindness, of Catelyn's strength, of Robb's laughter, and Arya's wildness, and knew he bore them with him always. When the first spring green broke through the snow, the realm celebrated as never before. The river broke its ice, and farmers spread seed in dark, rich earth. Children ran wild through the fields, Daenerys and Arya racing them on horseback. The castle rang with hammer and song as masons raised new walls and carpenters built new bridges. Ghost, ever patient, watched it all with golden eyes. The world did not stay quiet. Raiders from the Stepstones attacked a trade convoy. Jon dispatched ships from White Harbor to answer. An outbreak of fever in the west was quelled by Sam and a half-dozen maesters sent from Old Town. Wildlings squabbled with a northern clan over a strip of land, and Sansa rode out herself to settle it with wisdom, and when necessary, gentle threats. Arya caught a southern assassin in the act of poison. The council met the next morning and voted to open the gates to more travelers, not fewer. "Let them see we do not fear shadows," Arya said. News came, too, of new alliances. Dorne's prince would wed the Lady of the Arbor. The Ironborn pledged trade and no more reaving. Gendry's forges supplied plows and swords alike to villages once left to starve. Bran sent ravens bearing word of safe roads and good harvests. Daenerys founded a new order of healers, open to women and lowborn alike, teaching them what she had learned across the sea. One night, on the eve of the spring festival, Jon sat beneath the heart tree, listening to the wind sigh through the leaves. Sansa joined him, her eyes clear and fierce. "You know they speak of you as the king who will not call himself king." Jon shook his head. "It's better this way. They need to see it isn't about one man or one house. It's the lesson Father tried to teach us." She smiled. "You have built something that will last. Only if we keep mending it, every day." When she left, Arya appeared as if conjured from the snow, sitting beside him in silence. He handed her a knife he'd forged in the winter, and she smiled in her wolfish way. "If peace ever fails, I'll be ready." Jon nodded, and for a while they sat together, brother and sister, wolf and wolf. In the weeks that followed, life swelled with new purpose. A second school opened in the Gift, wildling and northern children learning together. The council voted to build a new port on the Shivering Sea, and merchants from the east sent envoys to Winterfell. Every day, Daenerys met with farmers, orphans, travelers. Every night Jon found her in the Godswood or the Solar, their hands twined together, talking quietly of what might yet be. The song of ice and fire had become a living thing, no longer the prophecy of an old man or the dream of a dead king, but the patient daily work of building a world from the ruins of old. The story that began with fire and blood ended not with a crown, nor a war, nor even a single name etched in stone, but with 1,000 lives quietly mending, growing and enduring. Spring after spring, as snow yielded to grass and sun, the world grew better. Never perfect, never easy, but full of hope, as stubborn as the north itself. And in Winterfell's Godswood, beneath the red boughs and silent faces of the old gods, the secret that had changed everything, Lyanna's truth, Jon's birth, the promise of the living, became not a burden, but a blessing, woven forever into the roots of the world. The days lengthened in the north, sunlight stretching through arrow slits and painting new patterns across the gray stones of Winterfell. Yet peace, Jon had learned, was not the absence of struggle. It was the constant tending of the flame, the slow, stubborn labor of choosing hope, even when the world shivered beneath the shadow of its own memory. Jon moved through these golden days with quiet diligence. He sat long hours with Sansa, drafting laws to keep the land and small folk safe. Land rights for wildlings settled in the gift, fair taxes, and strict justice for those who threatened the fragile peace. He learned the names of every village between Last Hearth and the Barrowlands, met with every clan chief, and ensured that their children could come to Winterfell's new schools, no matter what gods they prayed to or banners they'd once flown. Some of his greatest joy came in walking the castle's corridors in the afternoons, when sunlight cast ribbons through the chill air, and the smell of baking bread drifted up from the kitchens. Sometimes Daenerys joined him, her hand tucked in the crook of his arm, her laughter soft and private. Sometimes it was Arya, boots muddy, pockets full of wild apples, or Gendry with his blacksmith's hands stained from the forge. Once, Jon found Bran waiting for him in the Godswood, his eyes distant. "You're building something they will remember," Bran said, not with pride, nor with warning, just a strange, timeless certainty. "It's not the way of most kings, or most lords." "I'm no king," Jon said, smiling. "That's why it works," Bran answered. And Jon heard Lyanna's laughter, soft and fleeting, in the wind that tugged at the red leaves above them. That spring, the first of the great trade caravans arrived from the Reach. Wagons wound across the green fields, bringing barrels of olives, casks of wine, new tapestries, and even a troop of singers and mummers. Sansa welcomed them with a feast, the banners of both wolf and dragon hanging together above the high table. That night, the great hall rang with songs, some of old northern victories, some of the Dragon Queen who brought fire to winter and hope to spring, and new ones too, about the king without a crown. Jon blushed at that, but Daenerys squeezed his hand and Arya rolled her eyes, then threw a heel of bread at a singer who botched a verse about Gendry's hammer. When the southern visitors departed, they took with them stories of the north, not as a land of grim, warlike clans, but as a realm vibrant and open, strong in its unity and kindness. Some, for the first time in 100 years, stayed, opening shops in White Harbor, or taking wildling brides in the new gift. Even a few Ironborn staked out homes, promising to trade salt fish, not steal it. Jon watched these changes with cautious pride. He saw children learning their letters by firelight, wildling boys and northern girls racing together across the training yard, and old rivals sitting together at the long tables. He saw Daenerys leaning over maps with Sansa, planning new roads. He saw Arya returning from the Riverlands with news of more exiles coming home, and Gendry's smithy crowded with apprentices from every corner of the realm. Yet, even as the realm healed, the world outside whispered of unrest. Ships from the free cities came to White Harbor, bringing silk and spice but also rumors. A pirate king gathering followers on the stepstones, Volantine slavers growing bold, priests in the east preaching the rise of a new dragon. Tyrion, now the unofficial master of coin and wisdom, advised caution. "Peace is a tree with shallow roots," he told Jon over wine one night. "It will hold against most storms but not all. Plant more trees. Water them, keep the axes at bay." So Jon did. He sent letters to lords in the Vale, to the Martells of Dorne, to the new lords of the Riverlands and the islands. He welcomed their envoys, heard their grievances, and brokered agreements. He wrote to the Iron Bank, ensuring loans would flow, not swords. When Arya rode east again, this time to investigate the threat of the Pirate King, Jon sent a half-dozen of the North's finest with her, and the realm watched in awe as stark banners flew over far-off ports. A new harvest festival filled Winterfell in high summer. Banners from every region hung in the yard, and pavilions sprang up beyond the walls, bright with market stalls and the laughter of children. Samwell Tarly arrived with Gillian their son, beaming, and delivered news of fresh reforms at Old Town. Apprentices of every birth welcomed, the study of magic not forbidden, but cautiously overseen. Even a handful of red priests and priestesses attended, come to speak with Daenerys. Bearing prophecies she met with guarded curiosity. The festival became something greater than Jon or Sansa or Daenerys could have imagined, a living testament to the possibility of unity, not in conquest or fear, but in common labor and joy. The games were fierce: archery, swordplay, even wrestling and horse races. Gendry bested half the knights of the Vale at the Hammer, and Arya, despite her protests, was crowned festival champion after winning the archery contest blindfolded. As the bonfires burned and songs rose beneath the summer stars, Jon found himself wandering the edge of the Godswood, drawn by the sound of a lone harp. He found Daenerys there, sitting beneath the heart tree, the light catching in her silver hair. She was not alone. Bran was beside her, and little Sam played with pine cones at their feet. "I never thought I'd see peace like this," Daenerys said as Jon approached, her voice soft and full of wonder. "Sometimes I wake in the night and I'm afraid it's all a dream, that I'll wake in Meereen, or in the ruins of King's Landing, or in the fire." Jon knelt beside her, taking her hands. "It's real, and it's yours as much as mine." Bran opened his strange, deep eyes. "It's the work of many hands, and the work is never finished." Daenerys smiled, turning her face to the stars. "Let it never be finished then." In the months that followed, the realm kept its course. The council met often, even as its members traveled. Arya wrote from Pentos, her letters filled with the scent of the sea and tidings of trouble on the far side of the world. Sansa rode south to treat with Dorne's prince, her wisdom making allies where swords never could. Tyrion managed coin and contracts, his old pain softened by friendship and laughter. Bran, still mysterious, still distant, sent warnings of winter storms and wandering sellswords, his visions ensuring the realm never strayed too far into complacency. As the next winter approached, Jon became a father. Daenerys bore a daughter, silver-haired and fierce from the start, with eyes the deep gray of the Stark bloodline. They named her Lyanna, and the realm rejoiced. Sansa wept and held her niece. Arya returned just in time to whisper secrets in the baby's ear. Gendry swore an oath to teach her the hammer as soon as she could walk. Bran, holding the child, simply smiled and said, "The world changes again." In the years that followed, the peace Jon had helped forge spread and deepened, though never without challenge. There were new roads and new schools, new threats from pirates and restless lords, but the roots held. Lyanna grew alongside children of wildlings, Northmen, and Reachfolk, her laughter ringing through Winterfell's halls. Jon's hair went gray, but his heart stayed young, and Daenerys' strength only grew. Together they watched as the next generation took their places at the table, and the world, still imperfect, still troubled, grew better for their efforts. The story that began in blood and prophecy settled at last into quiet legend. The Wolf and the Dragon, the Council of Many Voices, the girl with eyes like storm and snow. It was told in the harvest fields and city squares, at sea and in the mountains, in every tongue. And beneath the old god's boughs, as the snow fell gently and the world turned, Jon would sometimes think he heard Lyanna's laughter again, joyous, free and eternal, a reminder that peace, once won, is never truly lost. It only waits for the next heart bold enough to tend its flame. Lyanna Snow's birth seemed to awaken a new hope in Winterfell, her first cries echoing through stone halls as a living promise. Wolf and dragon united in a child with pale gold hair and eyes the color of storm clouds. The castle rejoiced, from the high lords and ladies to the humblest cooks and stable hands. For days, the halls rang with laughter and feasting, and even the winds seemed gentler, as if the old gods themselves approved of this new Stark blood. Jon could scarcely take his eyes off his daughter, marveling at her tiny clenched fists, her wild tufts of hair, the fierce wail that left no doubt she carried the Targaryen spirit. He and Daenerys spent hours together, tending Lyanna, learning the rhythms of her cries and contentment. There was a peace in the nursery that Jon had never known in battle, a stillness deeper than the forests beyond the walls. Daenerys sang lullabies in Valyrian, her voice low and sure, while Jon hummed the northern songs he'd learned from old Nan as a child. Sometimes Arya would slip in and show Lyanna a polished dagger or a coin from Braavos, earning gurgling laughter and a scolding from Daenerys. Sansa visited each morning, always with a new blanket, or a story of the old Stark women who had ruled the north through harsher times. Gendry crafted a tiny silver wolf for the infant, which Lyanna promptly tried to eat. Bran, the most mysterious of all, watched her with distant, knowing eyes and left a small pouch of carved weirwood beads at her cradle, saying only, "For her journeys." The naming feast drew banners from every corner of the realm: northern lords, reachmen, wildlings, Dothraki riders, even envoys from Dorne and the Iron Islands. The hall brimmed with so many languages, armors, and colors that Winterfell seemed for a night more a city than a castle. Gendry drank with wildlings and Northmen alike. Sam told stories of the Old Town Library, and Sansa played the diplomat, matching lords in conversation, ever the linchpin of the new council. Even Tyrion seemed lighter, smiling more easily as he spoke of the peace that now truly had a future. It was a peace constantly tested. As Lyanna grew, so did the demands on Jon and Daenerys. Banditry lingered in the river valleys, pirates troubled the western coast, and rumors drifted from Essos. Whispers of a black dragon rallying sellswards, a priesthood in Volantis claiming a miracle child had been born beneath a red star. Tyrion and Sam pored over every letter, debating what threat or opportunity might hide behind each rumor. Yet Winterfell remained a beacon. The wildlings grew gardens and raised goats in the new gift, slowly knitting their fate to the norths. Sam's new maesters spread knowledge through the realm, training healers and scribes from every class. Sansa's reforms ensured that justice in the north was neither quick nor cruel, but always fair. Arya, restless as ever, came and went with the seasons, sometimes ranging east, sometimes patrolling the realm's borders, always returning with news, maps, and new tricks to teach Lyanna and the castle's children. One long summer day, Jon joined Daenerys and Sansa for council in the Solar. A letter from Old Town lay open between them, news that several ships flying Targaryen banners had docked in Lys, and that their captains claimed blood ties to Rhaegar and Daenerys both. Daenerys traced the edge of the parchment, her brow furrowed. There will always be those who claim the past. Blood, prophecy, banners, none of it matters if the people do not trust the ones who hold them. Sansa nodded. The lords worry, but it's the small folk who truly choose the shape of peace. They remember kindness more than fire. Jon thought of the way Lyanna grasped his finger, the trust in her gaze. We protect the living, that's all. If another dragon comes, they'll see soon enough what we have built. The summer passed into autumn. Lyanna's first steps were cheered by half the castle. She toddled headlong into Ghost's white fur, then Daenerys' arms, then Jon's boots, laughing as if nothing could ever harm her. Jon realized he would do anything to keep that laugh safe. The harvest festival was even greater that year. Farmers from the Barrowlands brought bushels of wheat, Dornishmen shared spiced wine, and Dothraki riders led horse races around the outer walls. Arya and Gendry organized the contests, and Sansa presided over the feast, her hair woven with autumn leaves, her eyes bright with pride and something softer. Sam arrived from Old Town with Gilly and their children, who ran riot in the Bailey with Lyanna and the wildling children. Jon wandered the festival with Daenerys, Lyanna on his hip, smiling at the sights, the pageantry of the Reach, the boisterous trading of the Ironborn, the music of Braavosi minstrels. It was not the north he'd grown up in, nor the realm Daenerys had crossed half the world to find, but something new, neither wolf nor dragon, but both. It was during that festival that a ship arrived from the east, its sails black as night, its captain bearing a letter sealed with the sigil of House Blackfyre, a dragon reversed, red on black. The captain, a young woman with eyes like molten silver and skin tanned by southern sun, bowed before Jon and Daenerys. My name is Sarah Waters. My mother served the last Blackfyres in exile, and my father was said to be a Targaryen by blood, if not by name. There is unrest in Essos, and many who seek your aid, or your downfall. I come in peace, but I bring a warning. The world does not sleep, and neither do its dragons. Then, Daenerys studied the girl's face. Blood alone does not make a dragon. Tell us your story, and we will see what part you may play in ours. Sarah spoke of free cities torn by famine, of would-be conquerors plotting to retake the Seven Kingdoms, of sorcerers and priests who saw omens in every comet and birth. They believe the song of ice and fire is not yet ended. She said, voice trembling with the burden of hope and fear. Jon thanked her, promising safe haven and counsel. He watched his council debate late into the night. Tyrion's caution, Sam's optimism, Sansa's resolve, Arya's restless energy, Daenerys' fire. In the end, they agreed to send envoys and open Winterfell's doors to refugees from across the sea. The new world would not be built behind walls. Through the winter that followed, the castle swelled with new faces: Braavosi traders, Lyseni healers, Pentoshi carpenters. The wildlings taught the newcomers to survive northern cold, and Daenerys' schools filled with eager children from every land. Lyanna ran among them, her laughter a living thread tying every house and hope together. Jon found himself changed too. He no longer felt the weight of the king the world had demanded of him. He walked with Daenerys beneath the snow-draped boughs of the Godswood, their daughter between them, and felt only gratitude. Spring came again. The rivers swelled, and the fields turned green. Lyanna Snow, now speaking in both the clipped syllables of the north and the flowing words of Valyria, planted her first tree beneath the heart tree, red leaves against the promise of new green. Jon bent beside her, helping her press the seedling into the soft earth. Daenerys knelt on her other side, hands muddy. Smiling, "What do you wish for, little one?" Daenerys asked. Lyanna looked up, fierce as any wolf, bright as any dragon. "A home that's safe. For everyone." Jon's heart swelled. He felt for a moment the ghosts of the Godswood, the old kings and queens, the nameless warriors, Lyanna Stark and Ned, and all the dead, watching, approving, at peace. A breeze carried the scent of growing things. Jon stood, Daenerys' hand in his, and watched their daughter's new tree take root in the world they'd remade. Above them, the heart tree's red eyes wept sap, not in grief, but in blessing. The realm endured. The song continued, no longer only of ice and fire, but of every heart that dared to hope, and every hand that worked to heal. And in Winterfell's ancient stones, a new legend was written, one of peace, of courage, and of the child who would carry wolf and dragon into all the springs to come.